I see there are a few of you on here already. Welcome. There will be a few minutes that we'll have here as I wait for people to show up. And if you'd like, go ahead and put in the chat who you are and where you're from. Let's get this going. It's always interesting doing these webinars that I have had in the past people from all over the world. So, hi Sheila, hi Julie from Georgia, Winnipeg, Canada. See what I mean? We're already international. I love it. And thank you for being here, Dave. And hi Raj from Santa Fe, Nueve, Mexico. Um, this is like one of my favorite things about doing these webinars, is that there are people from all over the world. And yes, in Hawaii, 7 a.m. Good for you for being up and being here with me, and aloha to you as well, to your beautiful islands. 7 a.m. Hi, Jackie from Minnesota. Jackie is one of my students. Sheila is one of my students. Raj is one of my students. So I always love that my students become part of the conversation. And so we're just going to give it another minute or two, and feel free to, as you're getting comments of who's from where and where everybody's from. I love seeing that. BookBaby has incredible reach. BookBaby, when I've done the webinars in the past, I've had people in Africa and Greenland and where else? New Zealand, Cuba, from all over. So I'm glad that you're here with me. And what this does is it gives us a feeling of connecting, right? Just a feeling of sharing and connecting. And so we get a chance to spend this time together. And that definitely means something to me. So we have just another minute or two. And if you'd like to put in the chat, what do I want to have you start with? How about one of your favorite words? Let's just see if anybody comes up with anything interesting. Favorite word. If you have a favorite word. I've been learning some new words lately. I feel like every once in a while I'll come across a word and I'll have no idea what it is, but it just sounds interesting to me phonetically, and I'll look it up, and then I discover that the meaning is really amazing as well. And so there's the space stuff that's been happening with the astronauts. Albedo, that was a word I had never heard. I wasn't sure what that was, and they kept talking about it. And I think just that whole astronaut Artemis integrity mission got me so swept up. And honestly, for the first time in a long time, I felt something that has been a little bit dormant, and I felt very hopeful just seeing what they were about and their experience. So Mike chimes in with kerfuffle. I do love kerfuffle. Kerfuffle is an amazing word. Let's see. Raj, I don't know how to pronounce that word. Otis, but it's a cool word. Hi, Joe from Sherwood. Ebullient. Ebullient, that's an interesting word. All right, so as you're populating your words, welcome to Why Every Writer Should Try Poetry. And I'm your hostess, Janna Lopez, and I am so happy to be here with you in partnership with one of my favorite companies and resources for writers, and that's BookBaby. And I've done webinars in the past with BookBaby. And BookBaby is really just an amazing resource for writers who are looking to expand their capacity going from writers to becoming authors, and they have a lot of resources. And, you know, one thing I love about BookBaby more than anything is that you get to talk to a human being when you call. And these things matter to me. These things matter to me. As somebody who has self-published 4 books with BookBaby, when I get to the crux at the end of that, when I put in all my heart, soul, and energy, I've always been grateful that I've had somebody to help me who's very caring and patient, bring it to the end. So these are 2 books. This one just came out like a month and a half ago, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me and who I am. This is the other one I've published with BookBaby. This is my first one. And so, as I said, I'm Janna Lopez, and I have a couple of different roles in my life. One of them is I am the inaugural poet in residence at Creighton University's School of Medicine. I am the first in the country as a poet to be housed in a medical school. So it's a tremendous honor. And I get to teach poetry to very smart and caring people. And the idea is to use poetry as a way to open up medical providers and care providers, help them have a mechanism to stave burnout and overwhelm and to be able to process very complicated emotions. And it gives a chance to reflect and connect back to purpose and mission. So I have been loving this work, and it's been very inspirational. Before this, and still with this, I am a book coach and a teacher and an educator, and I have helped dozens of people start and finish books. My whole thing is to help people get clear and connected and inspired, and to figure out why they're stuck, how to be unstuck, and to really get people connected back to the source and the purpose of why they wanted to write in the first place. Because I understand that, like, as we as writers want to get out there and create and express, I cannot tell you how many times I've sat there and stared at a blank screen and have felt stuck. And so I really help writers get unstuck and get clear. But I kind of do it from a different point of view. I am not your average bear where I'm going to tell you, here's the 30 days to get your best-selling book out in the market, or how to write 50,000 words in a month. The truth is that most writers who want to write and who have problems getting started, or lose their way of connection, or don't really know which way to go, or get into creative ruts. I mean, any one of those things, that there are mental, emotional, tactical, and spiritual reasons, I call them snares, of why writers get stuck, why we get stuck. And it could be any one of those things or all of those things. But most teachers I've had, or programs I've invested in, or things that I've done to get unstuck, really don't address the underlying causes of why we get stuck. And I think that's where I come in, because I think it's important, if I don't meet you as a writer and help you understand why or how you are stuck, then the same stuff happens over and over and over again. And so one of the things that has helped writers get unstuck, and I have worked with thousands of people, is the unbelievably effective and impactful superpower of poetry. Now, most writers that I've worked with always question how or why poetry even enters into the equation. Fiction writers, memoir writers, nonfiction writers, it doesn't matter. I've had more eye rolls and confused looks when I have said poetry is the hidden in plain sight superpower for writing, for creativity, for expression, but it really, really is. And I believe that every writer deserves the best shot at unjarring and unhinging and unraveling all the parts of them that are stuck and really do want to express. The truth is, this is what I always tell people. If you could have been unstuck and finished by now, you would have. No one loves being stuck. No one loves thinking about writing and being unable to write. And maybe you're a writer who's been really super active and super productive, and that's awesome. And even if that's the case, I'm still convinced that poetry can help extend and expand what it is you're writing, how it is you're writing. And the most important thing to me is how you feel and experience your relationship with your writing. And that's something a lot of people don't think about or consider. But I truly believe that writing is a relationship. And so if we're stuck and if we're unable to move forward, or maybe we just want to grow as writers and as creatives, I'm telling you that poetry is the vehicle that opened me up and many of the writers that I work with in some pretty interesting and profound ways. And what I love about it is that every time I've worked with the writer, they're always really proud of and surprised by whatever it is they have to express. And poetry, 9.8 times out of 10, has been the way this has happened. And so for my students out there who have worked with me, you may want to drop into the chat a couple of comments encouraging people who may be skeptical. And listen, if you're skeptical, that's cool. At least you're here. And that's the first step, right? Is opening ourselves up to curiosity rather than judgment, rather than self-criticism, rather than imposter syndrome, rather than comparison, rather than thinking about, you're actually here doing, and we're spending time together. And so the fact that you're here, hashtag winning. So we're going to talk about poetry and why I think every writer should try poetry. There's a lot of reasons why, but I'll pick maybe a few of the ones that I know might land or connect. And by the time we're done, depending on how it goes, I'm not looking at the chat or the comments now because I will get distracted, but I am going to leave time at the end for people to leave comments and ask questions, and I'll do my best to try to address them. And if I don't get to your comments or questions now, I promise you I will by email. Just drop your email in the chat with your question and I will respond. And so let's just go to the idea of, how do you think of yourself as a writer? Do you consider yourself a writer who is courageous? Or do you consider yourself a writer who tries different forms and formats? Are you a writer that stretches yourself and seeks to get uncomfortable with your own writing? And so just take a moment maybe and think about what or how would you describe yourself as a writer? Now that's something in the comments. I'm going to take a quick peek. I'm just curious. I am going to cheat. And so how would you describe yourself as a writer? Would you describe yourself as a curious writer, a courageous writer, a cautious writer? What kind of writer would you consider yourself to be? So you can drop those in the comments and I will take a look in a minute because I see some people are still chatting. All right, so Julie says, I'm still finding my persona and probably a bit cautious right now. I understand that. Dave describes himself as an explorer. Awesome. Jackie says that she's an optimistic writer, and I would agree. All at different times, says Millicent. Katie says, I've been trying to write a poem a day, first thing in the morning with mixed success. Robin talks about being curious. Judy, ready to take risks. All right, so perfect. I love this. I love this. All right, so I'll just tell you, a lot of people have perceptions about what poetry is and what poetry isn't. It's really hard for me to get to the place where people are open to the idea of poetry if we don't address two things. Number one, understanding the kind of writer that you actually are. And number two, what your thoughts are about poetry and being honest. You know, poetry has been put on a pedestal for a really long time. It's been rarefied, it's been separate from, it's been looked upon as the intellectual handshake that only really educated people have. And, you know, to be honest, I've written poetry my whole life, never called myself a poet, which is unbelievably sad, and did not read poetry until I was in my early 50s, which is also very sad. And part of that is because I felt like it belonged to everybody else who was smarter, more educated, that there was strict form, and it felt very restrictive. Poetry always felt restrictive, which the irony is that it's the most liberating, creative, unstructured thing I now know and believe in terms of what writing can bring. So poetry does not have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be structured. It's not about being so formalized. You don't have to have 18 college degrees to get into poetry. And so we're going to kind of just gently stair step our way in. Now, my hope for each and every one of you is if you could take at least one thing that opens you up to the idea of exploring poetry. By the time we're done, I'm going to feel like I have achieved and accomplished something magnificent. The perceptions are really deep and embedded around what it is or what it isn't. So let's start with the first thing that I will describe as why every writer should try poetry. Number one is that poetry challenges ruts. It challenges ruts. And most writers, including myself, get stuck in mental ruts. We get stuck in what we have in mind that we're going to write, the tone that we write, the style that we write, or the intention for what we want to write. And the truth is, we create and think from that same part of our creative corner of our brain over and over and over again. And so, like a car driving on the freeway with the water pouring out in the rain and those ruts on the highway, we do really get stuck in mental ruts. And we're not even aware of that. But the neurological pathways dictate that these formal, familiar patterns get embedded, and this is where ideas come and go. And so when we're presented with something new, like a crossword puzzle or playing music or engaging in some kind of an art or craft that we've never done before, what it's asking our mind to do is to kind of wake up. It's just asking the mind to wake up. And so because poetry is less familiar to most people most of the time, by just sitting with the poem, and if you can get out of your own way of judgment and criticism and like what it's supposed to be and do, and you just start to make room for it, it starts to spark something new by default because it's something different. And so what it can do is if, like, let's say you write science fiction, or let's say you write memoir, it allows a new part of the brain to ignite, and surprising elements of expression and awareness start to come forward. Now, this is after reading and writing poetry for some time. It starts to just wake your mind up to new possibilities. And it's because it's like exercising. If you haven't exercised in weeks or days, and all of a sudden you think you're going to go run a marathon. Forget it. You got to start going maybe around the block or something. And so reading poetry or writing poetry just starts to, it's my version of running around the block. So we start to notice words as new again. We start to look at craft or structure or why words stand out. We pay more intention and attention to words when we are engaging with poetry. And those two things, intention and attention, start to stir something new and interesting to where we ourselves become surprised. And just by doing that alone, we're breaking up our familiar ruts. So, what do you think? Are you in a writing rut? Are you in a creative rut? A little bit or not at all? But what is the idea about poetry creating intention and attention to help ignite your imagination and maybe kick you over a little bit out of that rut? What do you think of that idea? Okay. Second thing about poetry is that poetry really does give the capacity to say what is not on the page. Now, I know I've worked with a lot of novelists, I've worked with a lot of memoir writers, and I've worked with historical fiction writers. And what's interesting is that they want everything to be on the page, and they worry that if they don't include every single detail, that the reader is not going to get it or understand. And this is something that really keeps a lot of writers stuck, is the fear of not having it all on the page, that they have to say everything, especially with memoirists. But poetry, the images and ideas reveal so much more than the facts. Through poetic language, through imagery, these words by default imply meaning. And so what I mean about this is that it's much more powerful to have an implied meaning than having to explain every single thing. And with poetry, whether you're reading it or writing it, it gives your imagination a place to linger. Now, I'm going to get on my little soapbox here just for a moment. Why I think lingering outside of the page is so essential right now is because absolutely every word, every thought is trying to be spoon-fed to us through AI. And I kind of laugh. I talk about how, Clippy back in the Microsoft Word days was the beginning of AI. It was so harmless then. It was so, understated then. But now I can't write anything without some program trying to fill in the gaps for me. And it drives me nuts. And as a reader and as a writer and as a human being, I want a few minutes to linger. I want a few minutes to imagine, to process, to digest, to reflect. And I don't want every single gap of space and words and time being filled in for me. So this idea of allowing things to linger as the writer, when you create a space for your own words to linger and you use an image or a fragment instead of the exact thing itself, you're giving yourself that space and you're giving yourself that time to digest and internalize. So I'm going to give you an example. Grief is one of the themes that most people write from a lot, including myself. And so grief is one of those parts of being human, I believe, that we cannot intellectualize. We cannot talk our way into or out of grief. We cannot intellectualize the experience of grief. Thus, poetry, right? And so when we want to say what's not on the page, I wrote a poem about grief, and it was called Unspoken Bird. The idea of an unspoken bird says so much to me about the essence of grief, rather than talking about all the ways grief shows up in my life. I also described grief as a wheelchair in a desert. I described grief as a recipe short of sugar cube. So to me, those are very poetic ways to describe grief. I'm not putting everything about grief on the page, and I'm using poetry as a way to describe the loss, the disappointment, and the emptiness that goes with grief. And so using poetry to say what's not on the page is really powerful for a number of reasons, especially for you as a writer and a creator. The biggest joy that comes from writing is your own self-discovery. It's your own chance to reflect and receive your unique, beautiful, inspired expression, and to birth that in a way nothing else can. So when you engage with poetry and dialogue, I call it a conversation with yourself. You allow yourself to say and receive what's not on the page. So that's the second thing about why a writer should try poetry. So saying what's not on the page. Tell me what you think of that thought. All right, number 3 is through poetry as a writer, if you experiment and explore and start to write in this form, it gives you a way of saying old ideas in new ways. And that is important, especially if you've written a series of books or a serial story of any kind. We need to be able to say old ideas in new ways. In fact, that is what makes you the writer that you are, is how you choose to say and describe ideas. And there aren't like millions of new ideas out there. We're human beings. We recycle our ideas time and time and time again, thousands of years into this human existence experiment. And really, there's still only a handful of ideas. It's just a matter of who's expressing them and how they're doing it. And so David Bowie is like a prime example. I mean, he reinvented himself over and over and over again. But what made him so magical was all the new ways he said and expressed old ideas in his music and in his lyrics, right? So when we get into like the poetry way of thinking and being, and we're trying something new, because we're inherently unfamiliar with poetry, it commands our minds and our ideas and how we want to form the words to stretch differently than how we've always said them or thought them. And so by getting more familiar with this form, it invites us to stretch beyond the language of that lowest hanging fruit. And so eventually, like, this doesn't happen right away. This is over time. The more you start to read poetry, write poetry, engage with it, over time, it becomes subconsciously integrated. Just the way you start to orient yourself with thinking about words or imagining words, your sandbox just gets that much bigger, and you can choose which corner to play in or not play in, but at least you've got your sandbox now and it's grown by acres. And so just by like subconscious integration, you start to replace cliches with new language, new ideas, new words, and it starts to spark your own writing right to life. It's amazing. I am always so impressed. I have a couple of students, and to see them grow week after week, class after class, coming to me, never having tried poetry before, but showing up and being curious. And all of a sudden, this form has opened their expression and their creativity up in new ways, and they create some beautiful, beautiful work beyond anything they imagined before. Okay, so everybody's still with me. Awesome. All right, so the next thing that I think is important for every writer to understand about why to try writing poetry or engaging with poetry is because it gives you a chance to play with form, with structure. And for many of the writers, I would say 8 out of 10, one of the largest fears they have is how correct it is or not, or how polished or how researched. And I believe that writing is for only an audience of one, that you write whatever you want to write, you create whatever you want to create, and you can always choose to edit later or not. You can choose to share it later or not. But the process of writing gives you the opportunity to create in a way only for yourself. And then you can find that freedom. A lot of writers edit as they go, edit as they go. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be this. And it's like getting keys to a Porsche on the Autobahn, and you want to drive 100 miles an hour, and 1 mile into it, there's a toll bridge and you're stopped. And the way we self-edit and self-criticize along the way is like that toll bridge. It stops the flow, stops the freedom. And so subconscious expectations become really like a big weight on people with creativity. So when you start to explore with poetry, it gives you the freedom to try different structures, to try different forms, to try different spacing. And one of poetry's greatest gifts is the exact opposite of what they think poetry is. And poetry is not structure. Poetry is, in fact, freedom. And so when you start to write with this form, it opens you up, it loosens you, and it gives you a bigger Autobahn to just get in that car and drive and feel the wind in your hair. Put that window down. And so by braving the initial discomfort and writing a few poems, experimenting with this form and how to break up the rules without expectation, this builds your confidence as a writer and your willingness as a writer to experiment. It allows you to try new things without the Oxford comma in question. And that ultimately liberates your creativity, which is amazing. And that is what we want. So for reading poetry, just expose yourself to different forms. Pay attention to punctuation and line breaks and structure. And what do these do or not do for you when you start to look at them? I know a lot of people get very stressed out and uncomfortable when they first start working with me and we're taking a poetry class. And I tell them to break up the structure and the form. And it's like kind of stressful initially, but after a while, most writers feel really free, and it doesn't matter if they're doing it right or not, and they always surprise themselves with what comes. And so the lessons of this freedom are applicable whether you write science fiction or memoir or historical documents of any kind, or children's books. I've written some with some authors that have written children's books, and they've loved that this gives them a sense of play and enjoyment and freedom. And even for the business people that I've worked with, using poetry has helped them open themselves up about really what they want to say and how they're going to say it. And so the lessons of this are applicable no matter what genre you write in or what it is you want to accomplish. So playing with form. All right, so now we have one of the final pieces to this is that through poetry and reading poetry and writing poetry, your creativity gets reignited. Poetry was something that a lot of people that I've worked with, including myself, used to take for granted. I used to think if I read a poem and I didn't understand what it meant, that there was something wrong with me, that I was the only one that did not get the memo or the handshake. And so poetry can be very intimidating. And there are two things that I always teach with my students is there's poetry as a reader, and then there's poetry as a writer. And sometimes it takes a little bit of nudging or pushing in one area more than the other. I was not comfortable reading poetry, and yet I've written poetry my whole life. But now poetry has taught me kindness to myself, patience with myself, and it has given me a way to reignite my creativity, because now I'm challenged or invited to reimagine what it is I want to say and how I'm going to say it and why I'm going to say it. And so the heart of writing and expression are really your desire to express and create. And no one likes being stuck in self-judgment. And so the more I read poetry and started, revisiting and imagining it, the less intimidated I became, the more inspired I started to feel. And it woke my expression up in new ways. It ignited me in new ways. Now, I will say, I wanted to thank, BookBaby. We talked about doing this topic for this month because April is National Poetry Month. And to honor poetry and to open people up to the idea of poetry, BookBaby was gracious enough to want to provide this webinar. And so National Poetry Month means there's a lot of great activities going on online. I will encourage you to sign up to poets.org and get a poem a day in your email box. I don't read it every day. I don't understand every poem every day. And it's just exposed me to a broader scope of styles, perspectives, and ideas. And what I've come to learn is that being engaged with poetry is that there's not a single right answer or understanding. I'll give you a quick little mini lesson here. Poetry is, to me, about abstraction and about feeling and image. And it's about what we're experiencing, not whether or not we understand and if there's a single meaning. And so to be generous with yourself when you start to engage with poetry. Now, one of the things I'm known for and have started and teach is a method I call poetic intelligence. That sounds kind of fancy, but it's really not. And it's based on 3 simple ideas. When you have a poem in front of you and you do not understand what it means, you can just start with this very simple approach. Number 1, observation. What do you notice on the page? Are there short lines, large lines? Do you notice any images that speak to you or stand out to you? So observation and just coming at the poem with the lens of looking and witnessing and seeing what's there. The second thing about poetic intelligence is curiosity. What does this mean? What could it mean? I don't understand what they mean in that phrase. And so being curious is an important part of this process, because if you can be curious, you are making room for possibility and you are not focusing on self-judgment or criticism. So being curious. This is what we need in the world now. We need more curiosity. And then the third thing is what I call invitation. And you get to invite yourself into what I call the conversation with yourself. And from a poem, it doesn't matter if you understand it or not, if you're being curious, if you have questions, when you invite yourself into the conversation, you can just write in response to whatever you're reading or seeing or feeling. Now, this over time, you can do this within 5 minutes in the morning with coffee or tea. Have a book in front of you or have a pen and paper in front of you. Just by observing what's around you, being curious about what's around you, and inviting yourself into a conversation, you can probably create something really interesting and beautiful and free. And so these are tiny, tiny seeds that I'm planting, and hopefully they'll take root. And I love working with people and teaching people. And at the end of this, I'll have a link for a poetry class that's going to be just 2 hours. Tuesday, I think it's the 27th. I'll send the link. If you're interested, you can join me and we can play, and you can start to dive in a little bit deeper into being open and seeing what's there. But it's probably my favorite thing to engage people with is opening them up to poetry. And so I'm going to just check the chat. And what I want to hear from right now is, what is something that you have got out of what we're talking about so far? I'm going to kind of scroll through the chat while I recap. So number 1, we've talked about challenging ruts. Number 2, we talked about saying what's not on the page. Number 3, we talked about saying old ideas in new ways. And we talked about playing with form, breaking up form, playing with structure. And then we talked about reigniting creativity. And so let's see what we have here. All right, Julie says poetry can challenge my slow start in the morning and write without writing everything on the page. Yes, absolutely. I love that. Trying different forms, Christine says, yes. And Christine is a great example, a student who came, had not tried poetry, and ended up coming out with a beautiful poetry collection and a book as her first book. And I was very proud, very, very proud. And so let me just scroll through some of these other comments. Because I do usually teach in a more interactive format. So Joe says, I write songs, poems, short stories, and conduct my own orchestra. I write poems about hope, faith, and courage. Good for you. I love that, Joe. That's awesome. I love that. So Katie says, I've been trying to write a poem a day, first thing in the morning with mixed success. What change did I really notice? It made writing easier overall, like greasing gears. Good. I love that. I do. I love that. And so Eileen says, I wake in the middle of the night sleep, write poems. As long as you're writing poetry, it makes you a writer. I love that too. Awesome. So it's usually a mixed bag. Some people are really comfortable. Some people are a little skittish. Let's see. Raj, implied meaning, saying without spelling it out. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so one of the things that we get to do in this space is to think about yourselves as writers and where you want to go and what you want to do and what's keeping you stuck. And I really do care about helping people find their path forward and finding whatever's like there for them, true for them, and keeping them stuck or unstuck. And so I feel like we need to come together and figure out how we're going to do something different. It's about doing something different. And so I don't know how to pronounce your name and I don't want to flubble it up. Akina? Is that how you say your name? But I like what you said here. I used to write more poetry when you were younger, before all the responsibilities. And yeah, a lot of people do describe that. A lot of people do describe that. And so poetry is a way to be free and to play and to reconnect without expectation, without having it do something or be something, or necessarily doing something that we think has to happen for the imagined reader or the real readers that are out there. And so I want to address Cindy's comment. Cindy says, I work on a poem every day. I'm working on a novel in poetry format that you're trying to publish. It was a struggle at first. After sticking with it daily for the better part of a year, now the words flow better. So thanks for sharing that. And one thing I want to also offer is that I do not believe that writing generally or poetry is something that we need to do every day. Now, a lot of people are of the mindset to you have to do the morning pages and the artist's way, but I am not of that camp. I believe that writing is an invitation and not an expectation. And so if we put it on ourselves that we have to write every day or that we need to do something, now I'm not saying if you enjoy doing it every day, not to do it every day. But what I'm saying is that a lot of writers come to me and they think they have to write every day. Then it becomes a burden, an albatross, something that is weighing on them and in front of them and heavy, and not something that is inspired or creative. So when you invite yourself rather than expect yourself, some beautiful things can start to take the place of those expectations. And I have a lot of my philosophies that I do share around what writing is and what it isn't. So I'm going to put in the chat right now, and I have 3 different things that I offer. And, I'm not pushing timeshares in Vegas. These are just things that I really care about and try to make accessible for writers. If you're interested in deepening your process or exploring more or freeing yourself up more, I do have a couple of things coming up that I make available for everyone. And the first is a Writing Freedom Intensive class. It's a 2-hour live class, and it's going to be on Tuesday, April 28th, 5 p.m. Pacific, and it will be recorded. And in this class, because I want to interact with you, I want to be able to hear your questions, coach you in real time, talk to you in real time. And so this class is like really just about that fast breakthrough and to reconnect with your voice and to offer focus. And I'll offer a 5-step simple method in real time, how to move forward in your writing life without overwhelm or perfectionism, but with clarity. That's the first thing I'm offering. The second thing is the Writing Freedom Accelerator. And this is the class plus a video on how to identify your individual blocks so that you can free yourself and get unstuck. And it's on demand. You can download it anytime. And it comes with a 20-page writing blockbuster booklet that has really easy questions to guide you and help you answer the questions for yourself, because I really want writers who need structure and support to have something they can come back to. And then the last thing I'm offering is what I'm calling a breakthrough experience. And this is, you get the class, you get the video, you get the booklet, and you get a private one-on-one coaching session with me. And here's where I can really help you identify where you are stuck right here, right now. And so for the writers that have done this with me, it's perfect for those who want to figure out what's stopping them and remove those blocks and obstacles for good and true freedom and true creativity. And it gives me a chance to really work with you, to listen, and to meet you where you are. And so I do love offering that one-on-one coaching. So there are 3 elements that we can continue to work together if you would like. And so what I want to do now is kind of just recap a little bit what we talked about, and I'm going to keep my eye on the chat to see if there are any questions. So I just want to acknowledge your comment, Millicent, that every day for me is the key to be whole. Yes, for a lot of people, for writing every day is the key to being whole. And usually those are the people that are very open and connected and have an ongoing dialogue with themselves. And so I'm happy to hear you describe that writing helps you feel whole. There's a question about if I've ever worked with somebody with ADHD, and yes, I absolutely have. I absolutely have. That is a real struggle. And I think that is more of an issue these days as people are getting bombarded with technology and screens, and it's harder to focus. It's harder to commit to things. It's harder to zero in on ideas. And I think that for a lot of people, that struggle is absolutely frustrating, to not be able to focus and zero in and concentrate. So yes, Dave. Anyway, so let's see. I put up the link for the things that I'm offering, the class next Tuesday the 28th. And that is a 2-hour live intensive class. I have a chance to interact with you. The second was the class with the video and the workbook to help you work through your own snags in your own time. Or all of it with coaching. And that is the way I can really help you break through. That's why I call it a breakthrough. And so, and it means something to me. I've had in the last 2 months, I've had 7 authors put books out, and they've all had their own journeys and struggles and stories of how long it took them to get these books out or their journey. And it's not as important to me that the book actually makes it out. Don't get me wrong. I'm super excited when an author realizes that dream. What's important to me is that they've learned, they've grown, they've experienced, they feel accomplished, and they feel 100% free when they're writing. Because I have been there where I've wanted to write this book, thought about writing this book for 4 years, actually spent 1 year writing it. So it's not because I have any big secret message or process. I think what makes what I do unique is that I understand how to meet ourselves as writers exactly where we are. There is not a system or a hero's journey formula that I can follow. If I'm stuck, it's not going to make a difference what tools or information is out there, unless I'm clear about meeting myself exactly where I am. It's a near impossibility to move forward. And so it's about meeting you where you are, giving you what you need, helping you understand. So I just put in, I don't understand. I'm going to put the link in one more time, and it's in the chat. So let me know that you can get the link, because I see a couple of you are asking. Eileen, Raj doesn't see it. Do you not see it? Oh, sorry. Here, I think I had hosts and panelists. Let me put it to everyone. My sincere apologies. I am so sorry. Let me know that you can get the link. Let me know now if you can see it and you can get it okay. Yes. Okay. I'm so sorry. Here I am talking on and on and on, and I'm only posting it to myself. Oh, that's so funny. All right. So I've if you have any questions, I'll post it again. Join me in this 2-hour intensive live class, because I want to see you. I want to work with you. And that's Tuesday, the 28th, 5 p.m. And we'll talk about 5 steps to real time to get clarity and confidence and connection. If you want the video and the workbook, that's there for you. Or let me guide you and coach you. So I'm going to open it up to questions right now. Does anybody have any questions related to what we talked about? I want to thank BookBaby again for providing this and partnering with me. They are my favorite partner. They do amazing work for authors and writers. I call them the people's publisher, because they really do a great job. I send all my clients to BookBaby, and they really do care about making a difference in the experience and success of each and every writer I know. I'm not getting paid by them. I'm not, I don't have anything in this. I really am a fan. I've published all my books with BookBaby, and this one just came out. This one was my first one, and I have a few in between. So let's see if anybody has any questions. You are welcome, Katie. I'm glad you are encouraged. I really am. And how do you pronounce your name? Is it Akena? It's a gorgeous name. And you are very welcome. It means a lot to me to be here with each and every one of you. Ekena means paradise in Hawaiian. Gorgeous. What island are you from? Are you Big Island or Oahu? Okay. I know you guys really had a big rain, big situation a couple weeks ago. I hope everybody in your family and your ohana is safe and that your island is recovering. You're welcome, Julie. I'm just going to look at the comments again to see if anybody has anything. Hi, Susie. Susie, you definitely can show up for yourself. I believe in you. I absolutely believe in you. So I hope I will see you in person. Let me help you, each and every one of you. Let's get you open. Let's dive into poetry. Let's see what you're writing. I would love to hear what you're writing. I want to hear your writing dreams. I want to hear your writing struggles. I want to learn from you, and I want to provide you with freedom, writing freedom. And poetry is just one of those things. I do have a couple of, it's 428, Eileen. Is that Tuesday, 428? Let me just make sure because, with all the things that are going on, if I put the wrong date, I'm sorry, 428. 428. If I said 425, I'm sorry. It's a Tuesday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And it's the Writing Freedom Intensive. So yeah. Just looking at the comments again. And all right, so I see one comment here. I have enough poetry written for 2 books. My hesitation comes from the fact that self-publishing means I have no backing of a publisher's marketing department, and lack of awareness existence means no sales. Well, okay, so you're asking a couple of questions here about that. And the truth is that publishers in this day and age do not support writers the way they used to. Publishing has changed quite a bit. And in the publishing world, a lot of publishers really rely on you bringing them your audience, and they look for people that have hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm not trying to be negative or a naysayer. I used to be a magazine publisher, so I have a little bit of insight in the publishing world, and it shifted a lot. So the perception about self-publishing versus a traditional publisher is that the publisher will support the book. And it's just not the way it used to be. Publishers don't put the money behind the authors that they used to. And there are a lot of ways for self-publishing and self-published authors to market themselves that used to not be available. And it doesn't mean you have to do big, huge things, but through social media, through TikTok, through YouTube, and through a lot of free channels and mechanisms, an author can get their work out there. And so I do understand the concern. And I would just say that some of it in the publishing world has changed. And for me, self-publishing became a matter of autonomy. I didn't want somebody to take my work and step all over it and change everything. And in the traditional publishing world, it could take 2 years before it actually gets out. And then you don't have your own publishing rights. And what else? There just becomes a lot of layers of complication and I did used to want a traditional publisher, and I had an opportunity to have this book published with a traditional publisher, but I actually opted not to. And in the end, by writing what I wanted to write, saying what I wanted to say, creating the way I wanted to create, was a much better experience, a much better accomplishment, and I felt much more free and liberated in the end. And I do not regret my choice. I have been approached by traditional publishers, and I have opted not to go that route. Now, whatever you decide and however you choose to move forward in your publishing experience, there's no right way or wrong way. We have to find our own way. But to me, self-publishing was the only answer. Okay, so Cindy is saying, tried to publish, you wanted to purchase my book on Amazon. It's not in stock. So if you go to BookBaby, go to Bookshop on BookBaby and you can get it right away. Because since the book just came out, this book just came out, there was a limited supply and now it's out of stock and they have to replenish. So if you want to purchase the book, you can, and you want it now, you can go to BookBaby's bookshop and just look up my name and purchase it there. And if you have an issue, let me know, Cindy. And this book does talk a lot about my method of poetry. I do walk people step by step. Even though it says medicine needs poetry, I'm going to do another book that says people need poetry or humans need poetry, because the medicine is only just a little section in the middle. But I talk about why poetry is so essential. And something that I didn't talk about initially, but I'm such a believer in, is that we are experiencing such high levels of brain rot right now, and we are overwhelmed. We're operating on fear and fatigue. We're losing our ability to grapple and internalize our experience. And I call it the disappearance of the inner landscape. And poetry is the way that I've been connected at a deep level to what's really going on, who I really am, what life really means. And I do not want to lose a minute of my life experience because I'm tuned out and have no attention, and artificial intelligence has taken over every aspect of how my life becomes experienced. Think about how integrated it is in everything we do and everything we are. And I think poetry will save the human heart and the inner landscape. Poetry keeps me connected to being human. And I love that. I don't know if you all watched the space Artemis and Integrity. I was swept up in this. And when those 4 astronauts landed and they spoke in public for the first time, they did not talk about science. They did not talk about the technology. They could have, because it's magnificent what science and technology has accomplished. Magnificent. But what they talked about, all 4 astronauts, they talked about joy. They talked about gratitude. They talked about being human, and they talked about connection. And I loved that. And in my work and in my day-to-day stuff, this is the mission of why I'm so connected to what I do, is I want every single human being to stay connected to who they are and what their heart is about and what they have to say in their expression. Poetry is the way. It's definitely a way. It's the most impactful, important, significant, easy, free, accessible thing that I know that keeps me human. All right. So thank you so much for joining me. I could keep talking, but I'm sure you all have things to do with your day. If you would like to, in the chat, just leave me with one thing that you will take away from this day and carry forward. I would love to hear from you. One thing that you will carry forward from this 1 hour of time that will help you in your heart, your life, your writing, your expression. I would love to hear. Somebody just messaged me to post the link again. So there it is. Being present in my life through writing. Katie, I love this for you. Yes. Christine, you are so welcome. Akena, thank you for being here. Aloha, and inspiration is everywhere. Dave, I'm with you. I'm glad, and I would be happy to guide you in taking up poetry. And if it's not me, it doesn't matter. Just that you take up poetry is amazing. Cindy, I love how you said that poetry helps us get out of our rut. It is helping me so much these days, my childhood dream. Yay! I'm so happy for you. Hold on to that. Cherish that. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't let overwhelm or life or stuff take that away from you. Hold on very closely and cherish and protect that part of you, Cindy. Dr. Elizabeth, you'll consider poetry in the future. It was not in your thoughts. Awesome. Love that. Sheila says, astronaut observations, joy, gratitude, connection, being human. Yeah. Marcia, one of my favorite students. Remember to check my calendar in the morning so I don't miss the whole webinar. Guess what? It's recorded. You can go back and replay it. I love you, Jackie. I'm glad you registered too. And hi, Robin. I am glad you were here. Yes, getting away from AI. And Eileen, you're welcome. I'm glad it helped you look at poetry with new eyes. That is why I'm here. I believe in you guys. I really, really do. I want you to feel free, inspired, liberated. Expression is what we have. It's what makes us human. We have got to hold on to this with everything that we are. It is what life is about: experiencing, reflecting, expressing. All right, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining me. I believe in you, and I hope to see you in a class, or let me coach you. Let's hang out and play. Good work. Thank you so much. Aloha.